that process of just watching your thoughts is where all of that stuff about peace and tranquility and tinkle tinkle crystals and that whole that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about quieting your mind or having an empty mind or something like that.
Welcome to the Raising Wild Hearts podcast. I'm so glad you're here listening in as I get to the heart of the matter with the world's leading experts and authors in personal growth, transformation, positive psychology, and more. If you're a change maker, a cycle breaker, a revolutionary envisioning a more beautiful way to live, work, and play, well, me too. I'm your host, Ryan Watkin, and for the past decade, I've been alchemizing challenges to find the calm in the chaos. I believe we can change the world by starting at home in our own minds and hearts. And my hope is that these conversations are a light on your path. Let's go, wild ones. Hey friend, it's Ryan. I'm so glad you're here for today's interview. Today, I am joined by Bob Martin. Bob's uncommon journey takes him from a high-powered criminal trial lawyer during Miami's cocaine cowboy era to a healing mindfulness coordinator, certified meditation mentor, and published author. At 74, Bob draws from his diverse experiences as a criminal lawyer, restaurant owner, corporate consultant, and a community leader to guide others towards clarity and peace. Currently serving as a professor of wellness and mindfulness coordinator at Elon University, Bob blends Taoist teachings, brain science, and psychology to help individuals break free from limiting beliefs. His story of transformation offers powerful insights to resilient fulfillment and a meaningful life. So you already know this conversation will be profound. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Bob and I talk about a whole lot. We talk about first teaching kids meditation. We talk about how college students experience and respond to meditation. We talk a little bit about Bob's former career. We talk about happiness, resilience, suffering, and so much more. I hope you all enjoy this conversation as much as I did. If you're new here, make sure you're following along on Spotify or subscribed on Apple Podcasts. And if you feel super inspired and know someone who this conversation would benefit, send it on over to them. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting the show week after week. And if you're feeling inspired and you haven't done so already, I know so many of you have, but if you haven't done so, go ahead and leave a 5-star review and rating. Your words mean the absolute world to me. All right, let's jump in.
Please note, the opinions and perspectives of guests on the Raising Wild Hearts podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Ryan Watkin or anyone associated with the Raising Wild Hearts podcast.
Hi, Bob. Welcome to the Raising Wild Hearts podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. And it was really fun doing research on you. You have a really cool background that I was very curious about. And I'm going to start, though, with one of the things that you said, and this is a big claim, Bob. You said if kids were taught meditation even as early as kindergarten, we could change the world in one generation. And I am so into that because I say here on this podcast that we can change the world by starting at home. And I do believe that it's true. So how can we change the world in one generation with meditation?
So, I teach on campus. Elon University finally gave me a 2-credit course. And so I get 15 college kids every semester. And I love that. Of course, I have my private practice where I teach all kinds of folks. But then I do some pro bono work where I work with some kids coming out of the foster system or the juvenile justice system. And these kids could be anywhere from 9 to 12, 13, 14 years old. So anyway, there was a fella, one of my kids, call him Jamie. And so the way that we teach is that I meet with them for an hour and a half once a week. And then Duke University has developed this digital infrastructure, this great app that they get all of the guided meditations are on the app, and then they they listen to their guided meditations and they log it, and those logs come to my dashboard, and I get to give them feedback every single day, which makes this method of teaching way different from most others because every single day they get something back from me. Anyway, we're in our weekly meeting, and Jamie is talking about things that happened the week before. And Jamie says, "So I was out on the playground, and Sammy pushed me down, and got me really mad. And the first thing that I noticed was that my cheeks were burning. So I went over and I sat down on the bench so that I could pay attention to my cheeks." And then I started doing my breathing, and I thought, if I go and if I hit him, we'll never be friends. And so I let it go. And that's coming from a 12-year-old kid in the foster parent system.
Mm.
So if you can get that out of 2 or 3 weeks of meditation,
Yeah.
just 2 or 3 weeks, 10 minutes a day, and you can make that kind of a change, I say you start in kindergarten, you change the world in one generation.
Yeah. I'm with you. That's a beautiful story. And to imagine, as you were talking, some of the hardships that Jamie must have faced in his life and still faces on a daily basis is it's big stuff, you know, someone without a family, without parents to, you know, really guide and protect and
Mm-hmm.
nurture. And for him to be able to source that safety and that calm from within, I'm with you that one
Yeah.
generation it changes.
And, I mean, I literally get my life out of the changes that I see happen. Uh, not only is this way of teaching meditation great for the students, but you can imagine what it's like for me. I mean, just think about this. Every semester, I get 15 minds that I get to look into and see their daily thinking and see, what works and what doesn't work and the discoveries they make. And they start to break out of the conditioning. And all of a sudden they go, oh, you mean I really have a say in my life?
Yeah.
It's it's such a gift that I have been given.
Yeah. So when you say you can see their thoughts changing or see kind of these patterns falling away, are they logging some sort of progress in this app, or are you like
That
reading their
that's
minds? Like what's going on here?
no, that's what I'm saying.
They're
The
logging.
way they log,
Okay.
the app opens up, they do their 10 minutes, and then
Okay.
they will write a log. And maybe the log will say something like, "Oh, this was a terrible meditation because there was a dog barking and I was really distracted. And all I could do was think about how mad I was at the dog for getting me away from it because it was a bad day anyway, and blah, blah, blah." And so
Um,
I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning, and I sit down and I read the logs because they come to my dashboard through the app. And then
mm-hmm.
I'll respond to that by saying something like, "Well, you think it was a bad meditation. I think it was a great meditation. You noticed, not, I mean, yes, you got angry. Okay. Most of the time we just get angry, but you noticed that you got angry.
Yeah.
That's something that's brand new. Now you're learning that you can actually notice your thinking. So that you just took a huge giant step forward. That was wonderful. That was great. And that goes back to his app. And before he meditates the next day, he gets that comes up and he gets to see that before his next practice. So
Yeah.
yeah, I get to see inside their minds.
That's really cool. So your journey started as a high-powered, prestigious lawyer for basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, help me break it down. You were helping get criminals off the line. Yes? You were defending
Whereas
criminals.
that's how I
Is that
started. But then of
that's how
course
you
I went out
started?
and went out in private practice, and of course, you work for the state, you prosecute, you work for yourself, you defend. So I
Ah,
became a defense attorney when I went out and on my own.
okay.
And one of the fellows that we prosecuted, part of the mob slash cartel slash Cuban slash Haitian conglomerate of Miami during those cocaine cowboy days, those 70s. We hit them up for a lot of money. And when I went out in private practice, they came to me and walked right into my office, sat down, and said, you hit us for a lot of money. Okay. Anyway, long story short, they felt I was a pretty good lawyer to be able to beat their lawyers. And so they started hiring me and sending me clients.
Ah, okay. And what did you learn from that time in your life? Like, what did you walk away with? And why did you walk away from that career too?
Uh, well, what I learned is that um, it's kind of like Don Corleone said in The Godfather, I just want you to tell me the bad news first. Um, what I learned was that you don't put off things that are uncomfortable. You deal with them. And that was why we were able to work together for years. Because if there was something that was going to go badly, I just told them that's going to go badly for you. That's just going to be it. And it was the authenticity and the honesty and the straight upness about dealing with them. And so you carry that over into the rest of your life. Because we all have a tendency to kind of sugarcoat stuff and the like. And so I find that it makes life a lot easier if you just deal with the discomfort. And then the side effect, I suppose, that comes out of that is you begin to develop a tolerance for discomfort. It's how you build up your
Mm,
discomfort muscles.
mm-hmm.
So you can handle more things that at one time were a little bit too uncomfortable to handle. The way I guess I could say it the easiest is that at one time I did not like to go to funerals. I still don't like to go to funerals, but I wouldn't go to funerals because they were just uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say. And you build up your tolerance for discomfort, and all of a sudden you find, oh, my friend lost their mom. They're hurting. I just need to go and sit with them. Now, maybe uncomfortable still, but you can handle it. And so you do that. And then you can sense that just your very presence, just being there, made a difference for them. And then it's kind of like a feedback circle. It made a difference for them. And then you saw that your presence did make a difference. And so you're more inclined to do it the next time, just out of that kind of selfish, feel good feeling that you get when you help somebody else feel good.
Yeah.
That makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's fulfilling. So, would you say that's like the whole goal of meditation to actually sit with yourself and your feelings? Hey, it's me, Ryan. So, something I do every single day to invest in my growth, besides connecting with the humans on this podcast, obviously, is reading. Reading is where it all started for me. I was 5 when I became obsessed with books, writing them, reading them, collecting them. I love how I can get inspired with new ideas and stories and ways to grow. That's why I ask all my guests what they're reading. And finally, you can check out all the book recommendations from the experts and authors on the show in one place at raisingwildhearts.com/books. There are some life changers in there like You Are the Placebo and a few hidden gems like Sacred Motherhood and Living, Loving, and Learning. So if you want to get your hands on your next great read, check out the full list by heading to raisingwildhearts.com/books. Okay, back to the show.
Yes and no. Yes, and there's more to it.
Okay.
Yes, and I would say not. I would say yes, and so I guess there's a couple of different stages. Your basic skill building process. What you do when you start is you start just by sitting with your thoughts. And you say, well, so what's the benefit of that? And I guess the benefit of that is that if you sit with your thoughts, and I'm not talking about a long time here. We're not talking about, going to a mountaintop and waiting 3 years to get enlightened or something. I'm talking 10 minutes a day for a couple of days. And you just take that time and sit with your thoughts. All of a sudden, you come to this realization that you're not your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and that you actually have the ability to watch your thoughts. The scientists call it metacognition, thinking about your thinking. So it's all about developing this. Most of us do that. I mean, you've done it, you've done it when you're having a conversation and there's another little voice in your head saying, oh, this isn't going well, or, oh, I'm really making good points here. And you've got that little commentary going on in your head about the conversation that you're in. Well, you're meditating. That's meditation. But the only difference is that that happens kind of automatically and it's outside of any intentionality. Whereas when we sit down in meditation, we open ourselves up to having that experience and being in that experience with some intentionality so that we become more familiar with it and it becomes a skill rather than just something that happens to pop up accidentally into our heads. And the more familiar you get with being in that place where you're watching your thoughts, the more stability you find. Mm, uh, Let me put it this way. Kind of like in life, it's like we're riding on a log down a river. And if the river's calm, then life is la-di-da, life is but a dream. But then there are times when there's white water, and there's times when there's waterfalls, and there's times when your whole house is being swept away by a flood. And so there's all these different times. Now, when you're on the log and you're in the river, there's not a whole lot of sensation that I have any control over any of this. The river's going to be what the river's going to be. From the place of being on the log, life's a roller coaster and it will never not be. You will always have the sensation of being on the log. That doesn't go away. But from that place where you're watching your thought, it's like a little piece of you, like, a little, what did Superman call it? Clark Kent, he called it his alter ego. You have this like little alter ego that can climb up on the bank of the river and watch you going down the river.
Mm.
And from that place, you find that you're not as thrown by your emotions. You're more stable. You can evaluate things a little better. You have more of a say. You can watch and see how you responded to something and say, that didn't go so well. And so maybe the next time it comes up, you might act a little differently, or the next time, or the next time, or whenever. But that process of just watching your thoughts is where all of that stuff about peace and tranquility and tinkle tinkle crystals and that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about quieting your mind or having an empty mind or something like that.
Right. And I think that's what people think meditation is supposed to be, that they have to sit on a cushion and they have to empty their mind and no thoughts. And so, of course, they get frustrated because it's almost impossible, as many of us know. The thoughts just keep coming.
Amen.
Yeah. And I think, the monk on the mountaintop has the easy route because I've got 3 kids under 10, and it is a spiritual practice to get everybody with shoes on and out of the house in time. I mean, it is the work to be in life and
Yeah.
have all these things going on, and the people that you love and the people that you don't love around you, and to witness yourself on that log every day. I'm like, I would take a mountaintop for a month anytime. That would be the easy way out.
You're so right. You are so, so right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm so curious how your students are responding to this? You said, like, finally they let me do a class. So I wonder if there has been any pushback. I think meditation is becoming more mainstream. And I'm wondering, so that was like from the college, they finally let you do a 2 credit class, which is so cool. And I just like wish I had this in college because it probably would have helped my experience quite a bit. So I'm curious how these 19, 20, 22-year-olds are responding to these ideas that are probably pretty new for many of them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. So, of course, it's an elective, of course. No, nobody's going to be required to take it. So everybody is self-selecting. So then you might say, well, who is choosing to take this course? And for the most part, I find that I have perfectionists. I have a lot of overwhelm, a lot of
Mm,
overwhelm.
yeah.
And then sometimes I have some good procrastinators. And so it's folks that, just have an internal sense that, there's more to it than this. And I wish that I had a more skillful way of living life. And so some of my students, they take to it like a fish to water. I mean, they get it right away, boom. And we just have, because we have that daily interchange, some of those interchanges, are just absolutely delightful. But also they also are a little bit of nudging every day. There's a little bit of nudging, a little bit of pushing, So like usually the first couple of weeks they're all using the words concentrate, focus, distracted. They're using those words a lot.
Mm,
And most of the first 2 weeks, all my feedback is, well, maybe let's that word focus carries a lot of baggage with it. I mean, if you
yeah.
can keep focus, it's good, and if you lose focus, it's bad. And so maybe we can use a different word instead of focus. Let's say maybe my mind wandered. Okay, instead of
Uh,
that. So just getting a different language into their heads, over the
yeah.
first couple of weeks so that they can kind of stop, not stop, so that they can start to notice how judgmental they are. And
Yeah.
when I say they, I don't mean they, I mean we. I
Yes.
mean,
Us,
we are
everybody.
all
Yep.
got judgments going like all the time. Now, fortunately for me, as a practitioner, I still have all those judgments, but they've kind of faded into like the same kind of background noise that a siren in the city is. And you're in the city
Yep.
and you hear siren. Yeah, it's just
Yep.
background noise. It's blah, 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 blah. And I don't have to operate on it. But these kids are really thrown by all of that, the judgments they have. And there was this one young lady who I noticed wasn't logging now, and I'm thinking, huh, she took the course voluntarily, so she must have felt she had a need for it. And I'm sure that she knows that when you go to a gym, you can't just look at the machines, you got to get on them. So why is she not practicing and logging? So I called her, asked her if she'd stay after class once, and we had a conversation. And I mean, although I have a master's in social work and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, I'm not there as a social worker. I'm there as a meditation teacher. So we're going to use the meditation tools to try to work through whatever is going on with her. And it started out with kind of an admission that, yeah, I generally know what I need to do, and I just don't ever seem to, get it together to do it. And so asking like meditation questions like, so the thoughts that you're having in your head, what are the actual words that are using? Because we try to describe them. Oh, I have all these kind of judgments, or I have all these negative thoughts. But what are the words? What are the actual words? And so it took a little while before, she kind of grabbed onto some of them. And as she grabbed onto those, it came to be more of that she always seems to feel like she's sabotaging herself.
Mm.
And she started to get emotional. So I asked her, like, where in her body was she feeling the physical sensations of the emotion, which, just was the weirdest question that she'd ever heard. What do you mean? What do you mean? Where in my body?
Yeah.
All over. I feel sad all over. No. So and at that point, the dam broke open, the tears started coming down, and it came out with, I just don't feel like I deserve to be happy.
Mm.
So there. So still, where do you feel? Where are you feeling that? Well, she got started getting a little angry, and we kind of rode through the anger. And finally, she identified a spot that was really weird, but it was like 3 inches below her left collarbone.
Mm.
It wasn't. She said, "Not my heart. It's not my heart." So okay, okay, fine. But by the time that we started really examining where the physical sensations were and where the words were, now it started becoming an academic exercise of like what was really happening to me. And of course, when you're looking at where is the physical sensation in my body, you got to be here now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be catastrophizing about what I'm going to do in the future or regretting all of the times that I've sabotaged myself in the past. So all that got to go away because I'm looking for where do I feel it? That's so through that questioning, she finally kind of got it that, oh, that's what you mean by being in the present moment. Like we're here and we're looking at what's happening right now instead of all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to do a little teaching and, just told her that, emotions are generally just a combination of a physical sensation and a thought. Because, Ryan, if I were to say to you, I love you, but I didn't have a sense of yearning,
Mm-hmm.
it would be an academic statement.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had the sense of yearning, but there was no thought associated with it, I don't know, I might think I had indigestion or something, right? But when those two things combine, that's when you have an emotion. And if you can deconstruct them, then you can manage and become skillful about managing the emotion. Sometimes you want the emotion. Sometimes you need to be angry, right? When you're dealing with utility companies, you know,
Yeah.
you just, what do you mean I got this bill,
Right.
Anyway, she got it. And inside of that 45 minutes, um, she had an understanding of something which she didn't have before. And the only thing I can't tell you, definitely cause and effect, but within the next 2 weeks, she was logging every single day. And when I
Mm.
got her review at the end of the class, I always ask them to do a reflection. She said that I'm going to carry this into the rest of my life.
Wow.
And so, um, so I see those kinds of not maybe not to that great extent, but I see these little discoveries that people are making, just when they take a little time to look at their thinking.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story with a great ending. That's really inspiring. And I think it's a really good illustration for those of us who might be new to this idea of why would I want to meditate or for what perceived benefit would that give me? Because, this girl came in, she was struggling, she didn't know, and she got to the root of these things in a pretty short amount of time. And I think that's really a helpful illustration. Two, like we all have thoughts, we know they're there. Meditation does not have to be something that is like looks a certain way. We don't have to be chanting or like doing these movements. We don't even have to close our eyes. We can meditate while speaking to you. We can meditate and notice what's going on. So this is like a great jumping off point for everybody listening. Thank you. Yeah.
And I think it should also be said that meditation is not like a monolith. It's not like there's just one thing. I mean, there's walking meditation. There's the idea, there's Tonglen, which is a healing meditation. And then once you get past, once you develop the basic skills of kind of like being able at will, intentionally to step out of your thoughts and just watch your thoughts, once you've developed that basic little skill, then what we can start doing is we can start cultivating particular thoughts that we want to build up neural pathways so that we can actually restructure the physical brain with our thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little thing that I learned from a neuroscientist. He said that they had done an experiment in England where the taxi cab drivers had to study the map and they had to learn every single alleyway in all of London and pass a test. So the hippocampus, or the hippocampi, if you want to be technical, it's two of them.
I didn't realize that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, one on each hemisphere.
Okay, cool.
So that has to do with your spatial recognition, your sense of direction, and the like. So they took I don't know, MRIs or CMT, whatever those things are that they take pictures of the brain, and they measured that little organ. And after the study, they did it again, and they found out that it had grown longer, wider, taller, and thicker.
Yeah.
So using their thinking, they actually changed the structure of their brain to give them more capacity to do what they chose they wanted to do.
Wow.
And so the same thing is true of happiness, joy, awe. You can cultivate loving kindness. You can cultivate compassion. And these things can be learned, and you can actually change, the structure. Most of the time it happens in the left prefrontal cortex, if you want to be technical about it. But you can actually build up these neural pathways. And like you say, for those of people that are just getting into this, so you say, so what? Well, here's the difference. If you have a very thin neural pathway, it's kind of like a filament in a light bulb. Because it's thin and you're trying to push this electricity through it, there's resistance. And in a light bulb, it gets hot and it gives you light and heat. Okay. What that feels like to a human being is, oh, I'm not good at math. It feels like, oh, I don't like that, or that's hard for me to think about, or I can't wrap my head around that. It's just hard. It feels like it's hard to think because you're not getting the flow of electricity that easily through the brain. But every time you repeat the thought and you practice, you make that neural pathway thicker, and a thick neural pathway feels like, oh yeah, let's do a crossword puzzle. I'm good at that. I like that. So wouldn't it be, for all of those procrastinators out there in the world, wouldn't it be nice if you could change your brain so that instead of saying, oh, I don't like doing that, I gotta put it off till tomorrow, you kind of said, oh, I like doing that.
Yep.
And if given the choice of having to do a bunch of stuff I don't like doing or living life doing stuff I like doing, I'll choose the latter.
Yeah. As you were talking, I think about like the seasons in my life that have been struggles, right? I'm coming out of a season that was really hard. We had financial issues. My husband lost his job. We moved. We had another kid. We like all these things, all the waves kept coming. And I knew when I was in this season, like, I knew the habit of happiness. I knew the neuroscience of it. I knew the positive psychology. And yet, I still chose to stay in this kind of funk. I wasn't like, majorly depressed or anything. I was getting out of bed, I was functioning, but somewhere in me, I was just like, "Ugh." I was a little more grumpy, I was a little more edgy for like a couple years. And so I think back to that lovely version of me, and I have a lot of compassion for her. But I think as humans, a lot, that's what we do when we struggle. We get comfortable staying there. And we know there's a different way, some of us sometimes. And we know we can make different choices. But we like dig our heels in the sand and like double down on the misery and the suffering because, we got to suffer for life to be worthwhile, right? And I'm coming out of that season. It's been about a year of like kind of coming up for air. And I just started a meditation practice. I've been off and on for, I would say, about 7 or 8 years. I practice Kundalini yoga. And so the meditation that I'm doing is a Kundalini meditation because that's just my preference. And when I took the
Right.
class, I felt home. Something about it just felt like home. So let's break this two parts of it down, the suffering a little bit. Like, let's talk about your take on suffering. And then your take on when someone's like, hey, I think I want to try that. They sound like they are pretty happy. They sound like they know what they're talking about. Let me give this a try. Which set to use, like where to look, where to find the app or the type, the tradition that's right for them.
So for the answer to that question, I'll go back into some Buddhist psychology, which really interestingly has been confirmed by neuroscience, like to the T. But the problem, of course, is that we're trying to attack our suffering by trying to stop it. We're trying to not suffer.
Mm.
And brain science tells us that's really hard to do. You can't do that because the more what you resist persists. And the old sages knew this a long time ago. And what the Buddha came up with is he says there's basically three kinds of suffering. If you get right down to the roots of it all, there's three kinds of suffering. There's wanting, I want stuff, and usually it's I want stuff that I can't have, or I have something and I'm scared of losing it because I want it, so I'm scared of losing it, and it doesn't take into consideration the reality of the fact that everything is ephemeral, everything changes and passes. So you can't hold on to things forever. So that's just the reality of life. And so you're living in kind of an unreal life. So there's wanting, there's not wanting, and then there's ignorance. So these are the three things that cause our suffering. And like you say, we become addicted to our suffering. We don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
And because generally what we find out is when we suffer enough, we find that it serves a particular purpose in our life. And generally, I think, I don't know who said it, but you're not going to change until the pain of not changing is more than the pain of changing.
Mm-hmm.
But what the Buddha said, and he said this is that, well, you really can't not stop wanting. You just will. But what you can do is you can cultivate the antidote. And so he said there are three poisonous roots: wanting, which at its extreme is greed; not wanting, which at its extreme is hatred, and ignorance, which is just not knowing. So I see it, I want it, I want more. I see it, I don't want to get it away from me. Or I see it, I don't understand it, I want to destroy it or go to sleep.
Yeah.
And these are the three roots. And then he said, there are three sweet fruits, yeah. And these three sweet fruits are the antidotes. So if you find that you are wanting a lot and jealousy comes in that, it says so the antidote is loving kindness and generosity. Now, you can't stop wanting, but what you can do is you can cultivate generosity. And if you cultivate the generosity, it will balance out the wanting.
Mm.
So the antidote to hating is compassion. The antidote to ignorance is wisdom. So if we can find ways to cultivate those things, we will find that we start to not notice. It's not like it goes away, but it does. It's just we stop noticing that it's around. All of a sudden you go, oh, that's not important to me anymore for some
Yeah.
reason. And so when you, that's where the meditation goes to the next step. So when we have the basic skills, then we can do the loving kindness meditation, where it is a practice of learning how to open your heart, even to people that are difficult for you, learning to
Mm.
open your heart for, that guy who wouldn't give you the refund that you were asking for at Walmart, or whatever. And then developing compassion. And they discovered that there were ways of doing repetitive tasks that build up neural pathways in the brain that give you those compassion muscles, like Tonglen meditation is I think of something I'm suffering about, or something that you're suffering about, or something the world is suffering about. I'm thinking about, those poor kids in Mungawi, Africa, who don't have desks to sit on in school, and they have to sit on the ground and learn their lessons on the ground. So I'm thinking about, so what you do is you imagine their suffering as a black, oily cloud of vapor. And you imagine breathing it in and then holding it for a moment and allowing your heart center and your lungs to metaphorically purify all of that. And then you breathe out pure. You breathe out, what am I thinking? Not cure, healing. You breathe out healing.
Mm-hmm.
So you sit for 10 minutes and you're breathing in the suffering and you're purifying it and you're breathing out healing. The crazy part about it is that you're building up neural pathways in your brain that are virtually the same as you would be if you were helping a friend out of their suffering. If you were doing it in actual real life, you are still building up the same brain changes.
Yeah.
And so when we create that life where we have now intentionally built up our compassion, we find that we don't hate as much. We just don't dislike stuff as much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, here's the root, the poisonous root, and here's the sweet fruit. And so you have to practice it. Now, the answer to the other question about, like, the fits and starts, me too. It was years of fits and starts
Mm-hmm.
and the like. And then finally something felt like it was home and it took off. And so sometimes, you just have to be, patient until it clicks, and
Yeah.
don't beat yourself up because it's just the way things are.
That's right. So experimenting a little bit, just see what feels
Hmm.
good, see what feels like home. What I heard you say, I loved those explanations of suffering and the antidotes. I love that. I'm like taking notes furiously. And what I heard you say in there is that perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong or off a little bit, is that the goal, if we could use that word, is neutrality or equanimity, perhaps. Would you
Balance,
agree with that? Balance. Yeah.
balance.
As we start to wrap up, Bob, I would
Hmm.
love to know before I ask you the three questions I ask everybody at the end of the interview, I would really love to know what you wish people would ask you more about. Your students, your interviews that you do, what do you wish people would ask you about that they sometimes miss?
Wow. I don't think it's, I think that people ask me the questions they should be asking me. I guess what I really wish is that they asked it with more authenticity. Like,
Mm,
people say, oh, that sounds really great. I'd like to get started, but, it's just a passing thing that they're saying to be nice. What I would like is that, that people would be either say, yeah, it sounds great, but, that's not for me. I'd rather jog. And that's great, and
hmm.
it's wonderful. But if they are really interested in it, I'm there I'm there. I'm willing to go, 10 times around the block with them if they want to. So if they say that they're really interested, um, you know, I, I would like them to be just very authentic.
Yeah. That's a really cool answer. Not what I was expecting. Something that's really relevant in my life, though, as I've done the various evolutions and stages of this show. One of my mantras before I show up and hit record is tell the truth and lead with love. So if I'm unclear about something, saying I'm unclear about something. If I don't agree with
Mhm.
something, saying I don't agree with something, and
Mhm.
showing up really like what's in my mind and my heart combined, you know?
Mhm.
That's a cool
Which
answer.
brings us full circle back to the first question that you asked me about how did I deal with my mob clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Oh, I love it. So, what is actually, no, before I ask that, how can we find you, follow you, get your books, and learn more about the amazing work you're doing in the world, Bob?
So all those questions that, you say, what would I like people to ask me? Because they do ask it a lot, I put together a couple of ebooks that are free, downloadable. And one of them's like, is meditation for me? What is it? What is it not? How do you get started? And then what are some resources? Um, so that's all freely downloadable. There's also, you can find out more about me and the classes I teach and all that stuff. And at awiseandhappylife.com.
Perfect. We'll link everything up down below. So just go down below and click to get the ebooks and learn more about Bob on his website. I would like to go back to college to take your course. Honestly, I think it sounds amazing, and your students are very, very lucky to have you guiding them. So
Thanks
that's
so much.
amazing. Yeah. What's bringing you joy today, Bob?
Being with you, and I mean that authentically. I've been on a bunch of podcasts, and I have this is right up there at the top. I really, really enjoyed spending this time with you.
Me too. And I have to say, I'm getting emotional as you say that because it brings me so much joy. And
Mhm.
just to serve in this way and to spend time with another human being who has lived a life and lives their life and shows up to teach and serve, it's one of my great honors. So thank you.
You're welcome.
This,
And
yeah,
you have a terrific smile.
thank you so much. Thank you. And then the next question I have for you is what, if anything, are you reading right now? What's on your bookshelf?
I grew up a non-theist Buddhist Taoist, and I married a woman who is a recovering Southern Baptist Bible literalist, right?
Wow, quite a
And
combo.
she is a absolute saint, and she has a heart of gold. And so we found this church that is broad enough to be able to handle both of us. And so I'm helping them create a brochure uh, to talk about, that's a whole nother subject I could get off into, but uh, a lot of religion has been co-opted by a lot of different forces, and this is a very, very progressive church, an open and affirming church, and an environmental justice church, and the like, and it's doing a lot of good stuff in the world, and so I'm spending some time, getting some materials together for them, and so
you're in research mode. Yeah.
I'm in research mode. Yeah.
Okay. We might have to have you back on the podcast to talk about that and the religion and all that, because I find it fascinating too.
Mhm.
So, and then the last question I have for you is, who or what has taught you the most?
Oh, master watching me.
He was
Um,
your
that,
teacher.
that was another, yeah. When I was with my mob clients, my personal life was going to pot. I mean, I mean that more literally than figuratively.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And I was seeing a therapist, and the therapist turned out to be a student and an editor of this 72nd generation Taoist priest from the Shaolin Temple. And I met this guy, and he blew me away. And I studied under Master Ni for 8 years, and yeah, it just changed my life.
So is he like an author, or no? He's just like a
Yeah, yeah,
spiritual.
yeah. He's
He
very
does. He's got
prolific.
books. Okay.
He's got all kinds of books out there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if
He's
someone's
passed
interested,
now.
they can go Google him.
Yeah.
He's passed.
hmm
Okay. Got it. Thank you so
hmm
much. This conversation was profound, and I really appreciate you.
Likewise, back at you.
Hi again, friend. If you're listening to this, you made it to the end of a Raising Wild Hearts episode. Yay! Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you can hear more amazing conversations just like this one. And here's the deal. If you made it this far, go ahead and hop down on your podcast app and rate and review the show. Your words and 5 stars truly mean the world to me. Thank you for your support of the show. Thank you for showing up and listening week after week. I will be dropping new episodes every Monday, so tune in then, and I will talk to you soon.